Hey, cool.
Normally they go roaches, so in that case I quick layer drone
if
to 50, then make roaches to hold, and I should be ahead.
Cool. I mean, if you start coming across like really fast Nidus follow-ups, really fast Roach follow-ups, sometimes you'll
The,
be
the
like,
scout will the scout will
yeah,
see about that.
as long as you get your lair fast enough, right? Usually you should be able to identify it. I think the one you might struggle to identify if you're not used to it is the 31 drone, just Roach speed +1 attack, where it's like those upgrades kick in so fast and the roaches start railing across because it looks kind of normal. It's just, hey, wait, he's a little undersaturated. And then you're like, oh, what the hell? And all the overlords on the map just suddenly drop creep at once as the roaches flood out of their base. And it's just this obscenely fast build where if you're a few drones too high, it can be a bit hard to hold. But that's only really strong on the smaller maps. So it'd actually be more common here on... Yeah.
I'll wait till someone does that to me.
This will be the map where it happens. If it's on any map, this is going to be it. Submarine is the probably shortest rush distance now, right? Can you make me the host?
Yeah. So I had this game which I won, and a couple which I lost, and I find it really hard to analyze the replays of these games, seeing exactly where the mistakes were.
No worries.
So scrappy and so much goes wrong and is happening all the time on both sides.
Yeah. So an interesting note from chat. They said, "Oh, I'm surprised Pig doesn't like the spines up against the minerals. I love having them choked up. It limits the surface area, so the zealots can't kill them. It's fine once they're finished." They were saying, yeah, that the spines will just poke the zealots if they're in the choke points. This is all about the spines getting up. The game is over once your spine crawlers finish. It's not completely over. Obviously, there's me doing a pro gamer casting home story cup thing, but it's all about letting the spines finish. The problem is if those spines are up against the minerals, it can be a little bit awkward. You can't get back there very easily to surround the zealots if they come around your minerals and so on. It creates an area where it's just annoying to engage. It's not the worst thing in the world, though I have seen players really fuck it up where they actually wall off the gaps in their minerals with those spine crawlers and then they can't even get behind their own mineral line. That's the worst one to see. The important thing is in general just to really avoid those choke points and go for it.
So the drones have to go all the way around
because you've walled off the access paths, and then you're like, oh, and there's like these two zealots get back there, and your drones have to go all the way around your mineral line to try to defend your spines. You're like, okay, this is weird. Cool. So here we've got a game. It's going to be a Ling-Bane war, a bit scrappy and stuff. Was it our last coaching session where I was like, keep making banelings, keep making banelings, keep making banelings? I've coached a few people on ZVZ lately with this sort of aggression. I'm trying to remember if that was the session with you where I was like,
yeah,
just really, yeah, I kept repeating that. I was like, just keep making the banelings, keep making the banelings. Okay. Let's go back. So let's just double check everything looks like it's on time, which I think it is. So you went Baneling Nest before third hatch, which is totally fine. Allows your aggression to get going a little bit earlier. It's not the way I would do it for the macro follow-up, but it really makes very little difference. So it's
when I have the gas.
Okay, cool. Yeah, normally I go third hatch, then the Baneling Nest. It doesn't make too much diff. So we're going to hide these Banelings. Let's look at our Overlords. So I would have loved you to shift your Overlords. Once you realized you took that third, I would have liked these two Overlords to shuffle, right?
Oh.
That replaces that one, and that one moves up to there. Because then you would have had more vision over the more important fighting areas, just for where the third bases are. All right, let's go to your camera and get inside your head here a little bit. And let's write these notes here. Okay, Overlords shuffle. So you have vision outside their third and natural. Okay, so we're going to make two safety Banelings. Because we do see he's willing to engage us on the map. We see Lings coming out for him as well. Now, we are going straight on across. We don't really have our Ling Flood here just yet. It's just a few Lings. The Banes are very early, so they're not particularly supported right now. And we didn't click them into the mineral line. So this is something where the Banelings are ahead of your push. Oh. Yeah. So I think what we needed to just focus on here was either wait with those banelings, and that kind of naturally will happen if your baneling nest goes down just after your third hatch. Like that's the way I organize it.
I've been having this a lot, where the Banes are there and there aren't enough links to support. And I'm thinking, oh, he's morphing Banes. I need to go.
So should we just go Bane Nest right after the third hatch to make sure that times out? I mean, you can commit with those Banelings. The problem is if your opponent knows how to bring their queens to the front and focus fire, and you've got Banes going in on their own, they will just get focused down for the most part. Occasionally you'll get in there, they've only got one queen. Your 4 Banes go in, kill 6 drones on the natural, and you're like, well, that was nice. Like, that was actually great. But if this guy pulls this other queen to the front, you know, and the Lings aren't there, it's not going to be good. So I think Bane Nest either right after third hatch or just wait with those Banes, you know, for the Lings to arrive. Which one do you prefer?
Well, in that case, I might as well take the third quicker.
Okay. All right. So we'll do the third hatch to make sure that syncs up. Okay. Awesome. Overlord positioning. Just checking something. It looks like you are sending this Overlord. Is he moving? Oh, he's not moving. Okay, cool. So with your overlords, it would be really nice on this map to have one right in the middle, right? As the skirmishes happen, to try and see what's going on. Especially, like, these overlords down the bottom aren't important, right? One of these should be shuffling up in front of the third, as well as this one here, if we're being defensive. And if we really want to push one into the middle of the map, because we're trying to be aggressive, so we want most of the fights to happen in the middle and his side of the map, we could maybe shuffle one right up to the middle as well. But this map's got a lot of ground to cover depending on where people choose to run across the map. I'm kind of having this dawn on me. The more replays we look at on this map and talk about overlord placements, I'm like, oh wow, it's a lot of paths on Submarine, man. So your Lings do arrive and you go for the queen in the choke. If the queen's in the choke, I just never go for that. I always go for the drones. They're the bigger target. If the queen's in the open, I would go for her. And you know what? There is a queen that's actually got more surface area. Standing against the wall. Don't know if you noticed her. She's actually just out of your vision right now. But I think it would have been really good if we just shift click these drones on the natural. Because if you ever get in there and they've only got queens around, even just 4 Zerglings, if you shift click them on drones, you'll often kill 3 or 4 drones, which is really big at this stage of the game. It's a large percentage of the economy. So even though obviously killing queens opens up your damage for the future, that would have been huge. And you can see here, if we just shift click that one drone, that one Zergling on those drones, probably could have killed 2 or 3 at least, right? So I think our first wave there, we've missed an opportunity to really gain momentum, and we didn't morph more Banelings on those Zerglings as they came in. So remember, constant Baneling train, right? Because if we had more Banelings here right now, what does it do? It pins him back. Even if we've got no support, we've just like, hey, here's a Baneling. Suddenly he's got to put all of his focus into microing these Lings, or he goes out to counterattack, headbutts into it, loses these Zerglings. You know what? Look at his main and natural. He hasn't injected. He's already missed a full cycle. If you had a Baneling outside your opponent's base right now, he 100% doesn't remember to inject because he's too busy. So if we can get a cleaner, more consolidated first wave of aggression, followed up by, as those Lings rally and you're always morphing more Banelings and keeping that train going, I think we would have been in a great spot. We did morph 2 safety Banelings here at home, but then we ended up bringing those across the map. I'm okay with it. It's just something to keep in mind if we do end up getting backstabbed here. And we do see a lot of Lings running out from our opponent. So at some point here, we should probably be building a wave of Zerglings and sending them home. Or it looks like you've split off some of your Ling-Bane to go home. In fact, you're going to send most of your force home. Just got some Lings attacking the third. So this seems like pretty good juggling for you for now. I just want to see more Banelings morphing in the middle of the map so that when things settle down, we can get a real strong wave of pressure going.
My control groups for this, I have one group for attacking Lings, one group for attacking Banes, and one defense group, which sometimes ends up with
Lings and Banes on the
same group. Yeah. And then I just, if I need to micro, I just green box.
That's okay? It. Yeah, I mean, if you get more complicated than that, people are like, well, you should have. It's like, no, because then you're microing 4 control groups. It's like, yeah, I think the way you're doing it is perfectly fine. I mean, there's a reason why we leave, like, if the game gets into this mode, we leave a safety Baneling on top of the ramp. If the game gets scrappier and scrappier, we do more things like that actually don't have control groups to accommodate for the messiness. So what else? Well, I might leave a safety Baneling behind the third mineral line. It's like right up against behind the minerals, because then I can like go grab that and manually run it over to save it. I can leave the safety Baneling on top of my main ramp. Another one way behind my natural mineral line. Once again, just chilling, not on control group. because obviously having them on the control group can be devastating. So sometimes my banelings at home aren't on a control group. Like sometimes I end up, just grab some units. There's a few Banes with the Zerglings on the control group and I just try to box them. Same thing as you do there. It's a little bit dependent on the situation. If we get enough momentum going, we can keep the fight 90% on his side of the map. And that makes us very happy. And there are times where you can give up your third hatch. If you've got enough, you're like, nah, I'm going to kill like all the drones on his natural and start getting in his main and killing drones. And at home, I've just got, I pulled my 2 queens to the front and I have a few banelings there. And I don't need to micro at home because I know that's safe. And I'm going to give up the third. And I'm going to focus really hard on getting in there and killing his drones. Because I know if I can get him down to 15 workers, I don't give a shiz about losing my third base, right? I do not care at all. So that's actually a really kind of powerful thing sometimes, is to go, I know it's going to be so impossible to micro these 2 fights, like defending my third and the attack at the same time. I'm just going to give one up. Oh, these banelings. Oh, I was like, this is the power of the non-stop baneling train. These banelings in the middle of the map. That's the power of it. If those were clicked into the mineral line right now, they would have killed every one of these Zerglings, but you just click them outside the base. So even if you're just rallying Banes across the map, even if you just click them in the main base on the minimap, even that is so much better. Remember that if the banelings are walking up to their side of the base, just click them into their main or their natural, always.
Even with no link support.
Absolutely. Now they may just run in and die, but if they're not on a move command, they have such a high percentage chance of doing what these 2 banelings do. Killing a few Zerglings, often just 2 or 3. And it's one of those things where if they see banelings walking towards a mineral line, panic, pulling queens, running drones. And especially in the midst of everything else that's happening, there will be a lot of random baneling pairs and banelings I run into mineral lines that are just there to be automated and keep the pressure up. And it's just about that automation more than anything. And don't get me wrong, there will be the occasional time I'll see that baneling pair go in, it sees a queen, and I will grab it and I'll like shift click it. I'll be like, move back here and then shift click back into the main base. And that's very rare I even do that. Most of the time I'd rather just lose those banelings, have him be the one freaking out reacting to it while we're doing other things. But the moment we're not automating those banelings, we set ourselves up to have a few too many problems, I think, with the banelings just kind of derping.
Yeah, I haven't been doing that, just clicking them into the middle of the line. If I send them in, then I'm prepared to micro them and get them on drones.
Yeah, I mean, I like the idea of just sending them in and micro them as they get there, if you have the APM, right? So the idea is like, if not, they just go in and it's a scary threat and your opponent assumes you're microing your heart out on them, right? And if you're busy with other things, they just walk in and they might just die to queens. But there's a good chance they pick up a big wave of Zerglings coming out, like we talked about, that big rally of Zerglings they could have run into. There's a good chance they blow up a bunch of your enemy banelings. It's a little bit random how much damage they do, but what's very consistent is the amount of pressure, threat, and disruption that they cause to your opponent's rhythm. Because he can't casually inject and build drones and micro when there's banelings walking towards a mineral line. He has to give that the utmost respect. It's the advantage of fighting on your opponent's side of the map. Any mistake he makes where he lets those units through, huge problem, right? Whereas any mistake, you make on the offensive side, you're like, oh, I lost a few banelings. That's it, right? The only time it can go bad is if we run all our Zerglings into a baneling, or, if we keep our whole army clumped up. But if we split our units into enough situations, if we keep our banelings pre-spread, which we've been very good at doing, it's going to be really big. Now, here's a little situation here where it kind of pushed back to your side of the map. And I think what you needed to be really quick at doing here is saying, hey, I don't have queens. I got 2 queens. I got nothing but Ling-Bane. The best defense is a good offense, all right? So Zerglings are just shit for defense. Your instincts here should always be grab 90% of these Zerglings and send them around, whether that's or it's queuing them to go around and into the heart of their economy. And if you do that, even if they run into banelings, they'll be spread out because they'll naturally have kind of worked themselves into a column running so far across the map, right? They won't be in a big blob anymore. And hopefully you'll micro them as well when they get there, But more importantly, all we need is a couple of Zerglings and our banelings at home to defend against their Zerglings, right? But the moment we get focused on having a big pack of Zerglings, most of the time, we just end up being in a more dangerous scenario. So here, I'm immediately like, ooh, I mean, I can pick off that baneling, but there could be more banelings behind it and more banelings behind it and more banelings behind it. Why? Remember what we talked about, the constant stream of banelings? That's the reason we do it. It's because then your opponent just gets pinned back with this pack of Lings trying to split Lings off constantly. They're never going to find time to build an Overlord and get unsupply blocked. They're never going to find time to inject. And eventually they're going to lose all their drones or Zerglings to a Baneling. So we want to avoid letting our opponent put us in the exact same situation that we're trying to put our enemy in. And we do that by always using extra Zerglings to backstab. Even, like I said earlier, if we just get 4 or 5 Zerglings in, shift-click drones. Into the main, shift-click drones. There are many games I win where I'm like microing my heart out, and then they leave, or they GG, and I go, huh. And I look, and those 6 Lings I shift-clicked into their main base, I never even targeted drones, they killed the queen, and they've killed every single drone. And he didn't even react because he was so busy watching the fight, right? And I may have done a few more backstabs like this that didn't do damage, and there may have been multiple Banelings that just ran in, but I'm keeping my machine rolling. I'm injecting, I'm producing, and I'm keeping the fight on his side of the map. So the moment, you know, the mistake happens, it's a deadly mistake for him. All of my mistakes up to that point were like, oh, that was a little inefficient. Yeah. And that's, you know, we don't care as much. Yeah, you can notice that you got a bit focused on the defense here at the third. So if you were going to defend it, we would have dropped a creep tumor at our natural and brought both queens down to the third base, right? To combine with the Banelings while the Zerglings were backstabbing. That would have been the other way we kind of reinforced that defense. And you've got a bit of minerals right now, so you could have built 2 more queens to replace them if you wanted to swap into that more defensive mode.
I don't. I feel if I end up defending like this, then I've made a mistake.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. If it got to this stage, you should also have had the safety Bane on the ramp, right? Because there's a lot of room for him to also split across and backstab you. We also, yeah, I mean, imagine if there was an Overlord up here. We would have had so much more info going into these fights. And your Banelings, notice they're not clicked into the mineral line again, yeah. Always try to have them beelining towards the mineral line. Because where are his queens right now? They're actually in his main. Those Banelings had been clicked into the natural mineral line. You could have boxed one of them and then pulled back just one Baneling and shift-clicked it back and forwards to protect these Zerglings. But I think, honestly, there is so much power to having those Banelings just waddle mindlessly towards your opponent's mineral line, right? You did good micro there, and they really paid off. It's also something that we're going for a third base right now. So we're falling into the mindset of going for the easy pickings rather than the important pickings. And as much as we are going to kill this third base, which is nice, killing those 8 drones on the natural would have been nicer. And there's nothing defending them right now. Is there a third queen out? Yes. Could he bring them down? Yes. But I would rather we go for those drones and then kill the third afterwards, right? You know, we kind of use that as more of a distraction after he cements the defense on his natural. As it is, that washed up, this next wave of Banelings could be faster. So, and this is always so hard to do in the heat of battle, but let's go back just 30 seconds. So as this fight happens, wouldn't it have been great if these Banelings, like I said, were clicked towards the natural, and that also frees up our APM to do... Let's turn all those Zerglings into Banelings right now. Or you've only got enough gas for 2, but even just 2 more Banelings, it's just going to give us a bit more of a constant stream, right? It's going to allow us to maintain the absolute bullshit power of having zoning Banelings without pressure. So I guess if we always click Banelings into mineral lines to create threat, manually pull back 1 or 2 Banes if needed to zone Lings or go for a big pack of enemy Banes. Only micro the drones as they hit the mineral line. Now, obviously there's exceptions, right? Every rule in StarCraft has exceptions. But the reason this is such a powerful one is just that automation I was talking about. Because remember, the way we get ahead isn't often the direct damage. So that's all distraction. It's disruption. And what does that allow us to do? Meanwhile, we inject nonstop. We keep morphing Banelings nonstop, right? So it might not be the first wave. It's the second and the third wave. And you're doing 90% the correct things here, right? It's a slight reordering of your priorities to be a little bit less focused on this direct fight right here, because I feel like you're just a little focused on let's force the good fight, let's make him make the mistakes, let's micro these Banes onto the pack of Zerglings. I have more of a take my foot off the pedal approach where it's wait for it to happen. Because I've got those extra Banes rallying in, if I lose these Banes, it's fine. I've got more behind it. And as those Banes are getting close to finish morphing, I'm starting more Banes morphing. And I'm starting more. And it's, rather than focusing on this big pack of Lings, we're going to micro my heart out, I'll split half of them off and I'll run back and then up into the main just to create another problem and another thing. And I want to let him make the mistakes. And I think that's probably the main, if I really think about it, that's the main difference is I'm kind of going, I'm just going to create enough problems and at some point my opponent's going to crumble, right? So nothing lives or dies off one engagement. But it's more about setting up a system of pressure that will at some point break my opponent. Their fundamentals will fall apart or they will miss the micro on one area and lose too many units. So it's a system of overwhelming pressure, and we're trying to make our opponent hit that point where the mistakes start to stack up. So obviously getting the early pressure waves and stuff is good. Keeping the Banelings going is really good. But also what is going to allow you to do that is, like I said, being a little more active with those run-bys. Now, we talked about your 3 control groups earlier. So I think number 4 is your defense control group, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Right now you've just got one Baneling and an Overlord on it, which is fine. Do you have a... What do you use on number 7? Do you have another unit control group at all?
I use 7 sometimes in ZVT if I need to.
What's number 2?
Drop defense in the
right
in the main. So,
what's
2 is the queen with the lowest energy, so I can time the injects right.
Oh, cool. Okay, that's funky. I like it. It's a cool habit. We could use.
I tried a few weeks ago. I tried to stop doing that.
It's a handy.
With an internal timer, but I couldn't. It's just a reflex.
Well, that's a deeply ingrained habit at this point. So I'm like, we could reprogram that. Probably be worth it, but I don't really know. Yeah, it's a lot of effort. I don't think it's a high priority right now. We can talk about that down the track if we want, but I'm just thinking about that idea of more constantly in the chaos splitting off those. Like I said, there's like 4 to 8 Zerglings just to go around the fight. You bring the fight up here to the 3rd, they go down and then in, right? You know, it's just that idea of those Lings that are queued into the main base every now and then, or queued into the natural. Sometimes they're guarding the top of their ramp very well. Sometimes I'll run those Zerglings, I'll shift click them like here and then here. And then I'll just try to, as they get to the mineral line, just shift click on the drones. And you can get a surprising number of drone kills with that. So that can be a really nice move, right? So stealing Lings onto 7 to run by into main and natural, and basically, you know, try to snipe down drones. But what just to hit home, what are you doing? You're creating problems, right? Creating problems, you're creating distraction. So it's not necessarily do those individual Lings need to do big damage. Is that piling pressure on your opponent? Yes. It's also thinning out your Zergling pack. Why is that important? Because it just gives you less opportunities to throw all your Zerglings into a Baneling. Now, a lot of players, they micro the opposite. So this is how I like to really focus. A lot of players, when they Ling-Bane all in, their whole thing is, I need each of these Banelings to kill all of my opponent's Zerglings, and all I'm trying to do is get every Zergling in a big clump, focus firing my opponent's queens. This is like every player on the NA ladder that Ling-Bane all ins me. And I'm a bit of a cocky arsehole about it, but I'm always like, what the fuck are you doing, dude? Why don't you just go for my workers and split your units up and actually create problems? Because I look at it and I go, well, the problem with this is if your opponent knows how to just micro their Banelings in a circle around, keep them spread out, and keep a constant stream of defensive Banelings going, you're creating a simple problem for them to solve, which is get some queens up front for efficiency. And as long as you've always got at least one Baneling guarding those queens, what's your big pack of Lings going to do? It can't really engage into it, right? So that's why, for me, it's always like, if you find an opening here where they're unprepared, it looks great, but bam, sometimes we overextend and we lose that pack of lings, right? So I always look at this and I go, it's amazing when it works, and it's amazing for the first wave to do this sort of ling micro, where especially if you're like flooding across the map out of the shadows, especially if, say, you've pushed their overlord back, right? Sometimes you can get rid of this overlord or push it off the path, and then you have like, you know, they don't see you till you're most of the way across the map. Maybe they've only got one Baneling or no Banelings more. Get in there and just kill everything, right? You know, one decisive punch, but once someone knows what's happening and it's a protracted fight, I focus much more on just creating and stacking those problems up. We just want to create the Jenga tower that, you know, one piece is going to get pulled out and everything's going to fall apart. So that's the way I prefer to do it in that scenario, because whenever I see people running their whole pack of lings around in one big ball, I'm like, dude, if you split this in my main, my third, and my natural while attacking with Banelings marching towards my mineral line, as the defender, I'm like, oh, far out, man. I need to do a lot of things correct here to not lose everything, right? But if he's just focusing on the front, I'm like, oh, I just need to like keep these Banelings alive and just guard this one angle, right? As long as I guard this one angle, it's a contained problem. Both have their merits. That's just kind of, I guess, elucidating my thought process on it. And this is probably also something that stems from, I often play with lag. So I'm going to always be more focused on some sort of rhythmic system, right? That I can set up to win the game steadily, rather than being reliant on one moment of micro. You know, I'm naturally averse to anything that relies on one moment of perfect micro or good micro, because too often I'm handicapped by my server, right? So for me, I've always tried to develop a system that over time, systemically, rhythmically, mechanical pressure, that sort of stuff, that's what's going to allow me to win the game. And we can always kind of adjust the flavor, but hopefully this puts more tools in our arsenal, right?
Okay.
Good chance for you to do a quick review. So off the top of your head, what are some key things that we're changing here? We mentioned something with the build order. So are you going to change that order around slightly?
Third before the Bane Nest, because that means the first Banes will line up with the Ling Flood. I never want a big group of Lings defending. Defending should be Queens and Banes. If I have a big group of Lings, they always want to go across the map. Keep morphing Banes, and click them into the mineral line, and don't normally try to engage Lings with them.
Yeah, and if you're going to, just manually grab one, split it off. Just manually grab one, but keep the pack going towards the mineral line, because that's where the pressure comes from. The moment all the Banes change their path to chase the pack of Lings, it actually gives your opponent a bit of breathing room, because now he doesn't have that, oh shit, those guys are like seconds away from hitting my mineral line. And that's really where the pressure comes from.
I never stop. If I do have Banes going towards the mineral line, I'll never move them all in a different direction to engage the Lings. And break off Lings, group of Lings, to somewhere else, to the third or into the main, wherever possible, to get a bigger Ling spread and to create more chaos. To make it harder for them to deal with the Banes which keep coming in.
And on that, like this pack of Lings that runs to the main here is exactly that. This was kind of accidentally done just because your armies are both kind of crossing the map against each other, and you saw the Banes done.
I think that was deliberate. I think I broke those. Yeah, I broke those off.
Oh, they were on a separate.
They were. I just have a dumping group, so they go off control group then, and then I normally I just forget about them, or if I need to micro them, they just get boxed.
Cool.
It feels like so this one worked, but I feel,
you know what would have been really cool
if we do this sometimes, because it feels like they just get thrown away.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is there is an art to it, don't get me wrong. So it rests on a fine edge, right? If we just run 20 Lings in isolation, it's bad. And there's even times where it's like, well, I want to attack with those Lings, but I know he's got defense. So sometimes you'll like grab those Lings and you just like tell him to just wait there or there, right? Down in one of these angles. And then like, oh, he's coming out to counterattack you. And then you click them into that natural. So as he hits the midpoint of the map, suddenly he's got 6 Lings hitting his natural. And you just shift click those on the drones and you're like, nah. You know, it does big damage. It's great. So there is an art form to it, and there's also like that was such a big Ling attack you sent in the main there. That's a more dangerous one, right? Because you're putting more on the line. Remember what I said? Like the whole point of those Ling run bys is often to just send, to split your Lings up so that there's not as much chance of disaster if you do catch, they accidentally run into a Baneling or something. So it was a bit more of a dangerous one with how many Lings you ran in. But just the little bonus point we could have done there would have been splitting those 2 Banelings off, either in the corner or on this map. There's actually a little shadow right here, which I've just noticed. So notice how neither of you actually has vision. Right there. So there is actually, because there's so much space behind the mineral line, you can actually hide Banelings anywhere along those edges. And if there's enough problems going on, people never notice that happening, right? They never see you splitting those units off. I mean, have you seen my burrowed Zergling Baneling build, the Prairie Baneling build that I do?
No.
So it's this exact same build. I just go burrow before Baneling Nest. So it's a little risky if they do Baneling aggression really crisply, but my Baneling Nest isn't that much behind. And all I do is I just constantly send 2-3 Zerglings to run into the corner of the main and queue to burrow once they get there. So often people see the Lings run in, they move a few Lings after it, and then I'm keeping them busy with other stuff. I'm just constantly making Ling-Bane. They always assume those Lings have died because their units of attack moved after them and then come back to the front. So I come back 30 seconds later, 10 seconds later, unburrow them in the corner, morph to Banelings, rally them into the mineral line. And I just keep doing that over and over. I beat, last time we were warming up for EPT, TLO beat me like 3 games in a row, and I was like, okay, I'm going to stop playing standard, and I beat him with that build. It was purely due to him being very confused about what was happening, but you also, in the middle of the Ling-Bane skirmishes, you'll just be like, oh, I'm going to burrow a Baneling, like in the middle, out front, your natural. Oh, in between, the ramp between your natural and third. You just leave a few burrowed Banelings around, and you're almost always missing the huge money detonates on them, but it doesn't matter because your opponent freaks the hell out. All you need to do is show them that there's a Baneling in between their bases, and they're afraid to literally, they're like, do I set different rally points for my hatcheries? Like, all you need to do is threaten from one angle and try to lure him to the other side, and he's freaking out and he's making mistakes, like crazy. So it's like a super crazy, silly example of the whole let's just apply pressure, take it to the next level. So I'll run those 6 Lings into the natural that we were talking about. He'll come back. Oh, he's got 10 Lings and a Baneling. I'll just burrow them in the mineral line. And he's like, what? Sometimes they manually run a Baneling over top and try to detonate it on them. Sometimes they got to build a Spore Crawler. Sometimes they leave Zerglings there. It's still just 6 Zerglings. It doesn't cost me much. But what it does is it's massive just spanner in the works. Their whole rhythm gets torn apart. And you see these incredibly good players go, oh my God, I thought Ling-Bane battles were already stressful. Suddenly there's this weird thing where it's like, well, good luck having muscle memory against burrowed Banelings and burrowed Zerglings, added into the chaos of the Ling-Bane rally. So I just think that's kind of a funny example of taking the hidden Banelings in the corner to another level. But even at tip-top level, we see people hiding those Lings in the corners of the base consistently. If there's Ling-Bane fights going on, it's like, bam, Lings into the corner, Lings into the corner. One of my favorite things to do, if there's any Banelings left over when we get to the Roach stage, is I'll run those 2 Banelings in from here into that base as a pack of Lings just threatens the natural. Classic 1-2 punch. I'm like, look over here, oogie boogie. And then the Banelings hit the mineral line, and take out a bunch of drones there. Or vice versa. Sometimes it's the Banelings come from the bottom into the natural mineral line, 2 or 4 Banelings left over, and while your Roaches are attacking the third base, and, if they're not super on top of it, sometimes you just get a big money hit. So there's a lot of just pulling your opponent's attention around. But yeah, I think we've talked about a lot of different tools and things that we can apply, so it should be sick, man.
Okay.
So like I said, 90% of it is there. I'm looking at this and I'm going, oh shit, yeah, you're getting really good at Ling-Bane micro. What is the highest value point? We just talked about a lot of things. The highest value is honestly syncing up the first attack. With what you were doing there, if your first attack didn't give up the momentum by the Banelings going in first, then the Zerglings coming in, and there being no Banelings morph with those Zerglings, you would have won that game very quickly. I'm very convinced of that. So I've just pointed out 36 things you can do better. Let's remember, take a deep breath and remind yourself, hey, wait a second, you actually would have frigging destroyed if we'd simply got that first wave going a bit better. And that's powerful. So focus on the first wave. And did you keep Morphing Banes? Did you keep Momentum? That's got to be still the number one. If you keep that as your number one focus, you're going to get way better at your Zerg vs. Zerg.
Great. And these are fun games.
They are, aren't they? It's you know, you get a different mindset. Different mindset, embrace the knife fight. You know, it's like we're just going into the mud wrestling, you know?
Okay.
Awesome, man. All right. So sorry about yesterday, by the way. Thanks for the patience on that. I believe our next one is 2 weeks from now. Let's just double check the date. I believe it is 22nd Monday. 22nd of June.
Yes. Yep.
Awesome.
Then
and then the week after that, the exact same time. Yep.
Yeah.
Perfect, mate.
Well, then weekly for the next 3 weeks.
Yes. Yeah, I did think this was our first of a new package, right? So we got second, third.
I think so. Yeah. Yeah.
Second on the 22nd, third on the 29th, third on the fourth and the 6th, and then so you want to do the 13th as well? Yeah. All right. I'll put that in now. We will reserve those ahead of time for you. No worries, mate. All right. Have a good night, dude. Okay. I'll catch you next time.
Have a good stream.
Laters, man.
Bye.
All right. Thanks for hanging, guys. Hope you enjoyed that session.